Daytime starts right now.
If you don't love barbecue, are you even a true Texan? Our friend and celebrity historian Raffi Andonian is here to share how barbecue began and all the different styles and cultures that have evolved along the way. So I hope you're hungry. We're going to be talking meat.
Nice.
Did that get you all excited there?
That
Looking
did.
at all that
The
slab of ribs.
That's
and
right. That's
everything else.
That sounds good for lunch.
Right, there you go. Getting some ideas. It's National Barbecue Month. Our favorite celebrity historian, Raffi Andonian, is back to teach us everything we could ever want to know about the Texas food staple. Welcome back, everyone, and happy Monday. So May is National Barbecue Month. Celebrity historian Raffi Andonian is here to school us on how barbecue got started, also the many different styles and cultures surrounding it. Raffi, I love when you're here because you can make things that we think, how interesting can it be? You make everything fun. So thank you for being here and teaching us a little something.
Food is certainly fun, and food has culture reflected in it, and culture is always associated with history. So barbecue is a great example of that.
And we do love that here in Texas. So what are some interesting things about barbecue that we should know?
What I think of barbecue is it really is an American food because of the way it brings together different cultures. Now, it goes back to Christopher Columbus. You think that's connected to the story of America? Columbus shows up in North America. He's really actually in the Caribbean. And in the Caribbean, he encounters indigenous folks who are using green wood, which is moist wood, to use indirect heat on the meat. Well, think about what happens with the Spanish Empire after that. It goes across the continents, right? Hernando de Soto comes here through Texas as well. And there are some accounts associated with De Soto. And so with that, you have the European influence on these meats. And I'll give you an example how. Think about how Europeans love to baste meat, to put the juice in there.
They enjoy that basting business.
Exactly. Well, we think of barbecue, we think of moisture, right? So in Virginia, North Carolina, where it's very English, you have a lot of very vinegar-based stuff. In South Carolina, where it's very French and German, you have a lot of mustard-based. Think about Dijon mustard or, you know, the bratwurst, right? And what's interesting about it in the Southeast is they're using a lot of pig and pork. So that's why I brought pulled pork and ham to represent that. Why are they using pork? Well, in the South, they eat 5-to-1 pork to beef prior to the Civil War, believe it or not.
Really?
Why is that happening? Because they don't have the same open spaces. And so what happens is pigs can go around in the wild. When they go around the wild, that meat gets tough. When the meat gets tough, tenderizing through barbecue makes a lot of sense. So that's the process. However, as expansion west happens here in Texas, here there's a lot more space. So
yes,
here
we have a little bit of that here,
So the cattle can go out in the open. So here you're going to have a lot more of the beef. So of course the classic Texas dish is of course the brisket, right? So that's how you have the difference in the barbecue style, but the Texas influence doesn't end there. Let's go over to Memphis, which is a port city. Over there, because there's a lot of trade, you're going to have molasses and that sweet taste that Memphis tends to have. So of course the last place that we think of within the context of major barbecue places is Kansas City, another major stop. Well, Texas's influence is felt over there too, because Kansas City originates from a Memphis barbecue maker going to Kansas City, but he didn't follow all the rules for pork, so he brought in the beef from Texas. So that's why in Kansas City you get a lot of burnt ends, for example, which is beef, but with that moist sauce of Memphis. So it's kind of this hybrid.
That's right. That's my favorite kind.
Well, that's the Kansas City style.
I always get the end piece.
So it's an example of how that Texas and Memphis is hybrid in Kansas City. Now, when we think of Memphis, of course, we think of ribs. So I brought the ribs as well, the baby back ribs. Sometimes you can also see St. Louis style ribs, which is nearby there. So that's how you get all these different cultural influences in what we think of barbecue and the slow cooking. Now, one of the things that I think is fascinating is, what is barbecue? Is it always a slow cooking or is it grilling? What do you think? Because you know, sometimes someone says, I was doing a barbecue this weekend, and you were just talking about it earlier.
I would think it would be slow.
I think of that way too, especially having lived in the South for part of my life. But where I grew up in California, for example, when you say barbecuing, it means you're grilling. And there's a huge debate about that. But grilling wasn't a big deal until after World War II. After World War II, you had the Cold War. In the context of the Cold War, you have, for example, this notion of we got to show American democracy and American fortitude. And think about how we think of red meat to this day in the backyard, right?
Yes,
I'm strong, it's prosperous.
We do it July 4th.
That's right. So it's contrasting over to, of course, the Soviet Union. But a couple other things happened in that that period in the 1950s when barbecue, grilling particularly blows up. One of them is gender roles. You were just talking about it earlier. So, for example, when you have the rise of corporate jobs for men no longer working as much with their hands, there's this notion of, let me go back to the origins of meat and play with fire.
Stuff.
And you just talked about your husband doing that over the weekend, and you were doing the domestic stuff. And that was reinforced in the 1950s. There's women doing this stuff on the sides and the cleanup, and the man playing with the fire, right? And there's also an American story there. Remember, this is a very American in the way cultures come together, but I think grilling is that way too.
Yeah.
Because, for example, there's this notion of we're going back to our heritage as pioneers.
Yeah.
And so we're out on the frontier as cowboys and grilling. And/or this notion of barbecue as grilling especially, and this kind of barbecue has a lot of cultural influences. James Beard, to this day, the Beard Awards are named after him, had a book on barbecue and pontificated about all the different cultural influences that come into it. The story of immigration is the story of America. So that's how you have the rise of grilling post-World War II as well, and hence the divide in what is actual barbecue.
Can I just have a 1/100th of your memory, please?
I love food. I love history. Amazing. It all comes together here. You're tasting history and culture when you're eating barbecue, no matter what style.
Well, Raffi, you are the best. Thank you so much. All I know is all the men in here are like, yeah, Raffi, but can we have that beef?
Of course,
are you
absolutely.
Take
No. Of course, going to stay here for us to feast.
Oh, my gosh. Well, thank you for that lesson in barbecue. I love it. Who knew?
Next time you eat it, just remember the taste of history.
I will think of all of those things, Raffi. And if you would like more on Raffi, he really is the best, you guys. He has a website at celebrityhistorian.com. You can also follow him on Instagram at celebrity_historian. Thank you so much, friend. All right, guys, and don't go anywhere, because coming up, what a new study says about men who drive the loudest cars in the neighborhood. You know those guys. That's a manly thing,
I like cars too.
Yes, ladies, you're going to want to hear all about this. And gentlemen, if you are on the hunt for a new style or something to make your hair stand out in a crowd, Cordero is getting a little something special from our friends at Game Changers Barber Academy. We'll see what they're cooking up when we reveal the final look in studio later.